So welcome to Gut Health. We're going to be recording this presentation today, so I'll close the video off when we get to questions. Gut health is really important. When people ask me if I can only do a couple of things for my health, what do I start with? So the first thing I say is sleep hygiene, because obviously sleep is the best thing you can do for your health overall. And then secondly, we start talking about gut health. So I've broken down the presentation back here. And first of all, let's think about how gut health is featured in our language and in the colloquialisms. That word is always hard to say. So people say, I have butterflies in my stomach, use your gut, I used my gut instinct. Can anybody else think of other sayings that we have that has to do with the belly or the gut? Go ahead.
It was like a kick in the gut.
Oh, a kick in the gut. Yes, exactly.
My belly hurts.
My belly hurts, sure. Anything else? Yeah, so the gut is pretty heavily featured in our language, and that is because maybe intuitively we know that our gut is our second brain. So there's 25 foot plus of gut in our body, and I call it one of our body ecosystems because there are a lot of processes that occur in the body that rely on each other for health, and we're going to talk about those today. So if you have a 25-foot ecosystem in your body, and if that ecosystem is responsible for your overall health, you can imagine that we really need to be on top of gut health to be overall working on our wellness. So we're going to talk about that today. How you love your gut begins with the fermentation process. You need to have adequate fermentation and motility, which means movement in your gut, for all the health benefits and advantages that you get from this part of your body. Fermentation is a process that is potentiated by several different elements. You've got prebiotics, probiotics, and fiber. So I want to talk about why those things are important and then give you examples of what you can do to get those things in your system. So prebiotics and probiotics are inextricably linked. They work together, and a probiotic feeds on a prebiotic. So they have to occur together in the gut to potentiate this fermentation system that I'm talking about. So prebiotics you can actually get them and take them in a capsule like probiotics, but actually they're naturally occurring organisms in food as a probiotics. And you can get prebiotics in things that you think about as roughage. So the probiotic may be a little more tricky to get in food, but yogurt is a common example of that. Although I don't recommend you eat processed yogurt because it's high in sugar and it has other things added to it. So I'd almost recommend you take a probiotic instead of eating the yogurt because of that, the additives in it. So prebiotic and probiotics work together in this fermentation process to mediate mood and our immune system. And then there's a third thing over here, fiber. Fiber can be soluble or insoluble. Insoluble fiber you can think of as like the bulk that moves through that 25-foot gut. You know, that acts kind of like a vacuum cleaner, making sure that everything stays clean in there. And the insoluble fiber, that is in that's the fiber in food. Soluble fiber is like a gelatin process. So if insoluble fiber is the vacuum cleaner that moves through your gut, the soluble fiber makes everything slippery. Does that make sense? So you have to have both. If you have insoluble fiber, lots of it, lots of roughage in your diet, but you don't drink enough water and you don't have enough soluble fiber, that can lead to constipation. So even folks that are eating a lot of roughage and thinking they're healthy, if you're not adequately hydrating and you don't have enough of the soluble fiber that dissolves and makes it slippery in there, you know, there's going to be problems with that. So, prebiotics are important, probiotics are important, fiber, both kinds are important. Let's take a look at why. So the 25-foot gut is not just a system where you dump in food and then it comes out the other end. This fermentation process is important for lots of different health reasons. Let's talk about mood and how serotonin is potentiated in this process. So serotonin is a neurotransmitter. It is responsible for maintaining our mood. If you're on medication, for instance, that's an SSRI like Prozac, that keeps serotonin in the synapse, meaning the serotonin stays there so that you can feel good. So to do the serotonin process naturally, you have to have this fermentation going on with all these elements. Now, the 25-foot gut has more serotonin receptors in it than the brain. So that's why it's called our second brain. So the gut potentiates mood in that manner. And there's also some new research showing how the gut and the brain are connected in the fight, flight, freeze response in PTSD or in crisis. So there's probably more mood benefits and stress resilience benefits in the gut than we know of today, but there's a lot of research being done on that. So the gut potentiates our immune system by making sure that it's balanced through all of these elements. And one thing that I want you to know that is that the human body has a 2-to-1 ratio bacteria to cells. I'll say that again. A 2-to-1 ratio bacteria to cells. So the bacteria, the flora balance in our body is extremely crucial in our wellness. So you can imagine how that is linked to our immune system. And in order to make sure that this bacteria is supported in the gut, that's why we have to make sure that this fermentation process is occurring to the best of our ability. So again, the gut isn't something just that we dump food in and it comes out at the other end. We want to make sure, especially if we are, spending a lot of money on good, clean food, that we're getting adequate nutrition out of that food, that whatever is going in is being processed properly by this massive ecosystem. So nutrition can only occur adequately if the motility is right in the gut, as well as everything else. And motility means movement. So the nutrition is helped by making sure you've got soluble and insoluble fiber to mitigate the motility in the gut. And this is working as a whole. So the digestive process, the bacteria process, the mood, and the immune system all works together in that 25 foot of tissue in your body. So these are some points that I want you to know. Again, we've got a 2-to-1 ratio bacteria to cells. If our gut is off balance, that's going to mean that the rest of our body is off balance. We have more serotonin in the gut when it's working properly than we do in the brain. And serotonin is necessary for mood and repelling stress. 75% of our immune system is in our gut, 75%. So if we're not eating the right things, if we don't have enough bacteria and fiber to digest, our immune system is also not going to function properly. So what else do I want to say? I want to make sure that we understand this cycle here. So stress is basically part of our modern life, and that leads to inflammation. Inflammation is at the root of almost every disease that we know, right? Whether it's mental health issues, chronic health issues, or things that pop up when we're stressed. Inflammation is at the root of most disease. The gut can help to limit the impact of stress and inflammation if it's kept in balance. Without adequate balance and fermentation in the gut, we are not resilient to stress, and we are not resilient to inflammation and disease. So if you look online and if you search Google and ask, do I need to take supplements, you're going to see a lot of people on there gabbing to you about the supplement industry taking your money with no benefit. Supplements are absolutely necessary. There's common examples of this. If you take a sample of people living in the northern hemisphere, for instance, there's 30% of that population are going to be deficient in vitamin D, which is important for mood, bones, and everything else. That's just one example. Because our lives are so stressful and that causes inflammation, it's fairly impossible to get all the supplements that we need. Think also about our food industry. Think about where our meat comes from if you're a carnivore, and think about the genetic modification that's in the food industry, and also what's actually sprayed on the plants. So there's a lot going into our bodies that is not good for our body, and supplements again can act as an insurance policy to some of those issues. So people ask me all the time, if I want a healthy gut, what do I do? Your first thing is to increase your water, double your liquid intake. You're not going to have adequate fermentation and adequate motility without enough liquid. You must double your water intake and flush that system. The second thing you have to do is eat as clean as possible. It doesn't mean that you have to eat all organic food, but a challenge is to take out just 2 processed foods that you buy in the freezer at the supermarket and replace that with something that you make from scratch. The other thing that you can do is set yourself up with a simple supplement plan. And the supplements that are most important for the gut are ginger and turmeric taken together with black pepper, because they lower inflammation. And as we've described, inflammation is at the root of almost every disease that we know. So ginger and turmeric with black pepper to aid digestion and reduce inflammation are important. And also there's a lot of research on the importance of magnesium. Now, magnesium is important for lots of things: sleep, restless legs, anxiety. It's likely that we don't get enough magnesium in our diet, so there's nothing wrong with taking it. Do your research. There's lots of different kinds of magnesium, and which kind you take for how long depends on how much you need. So do your research before you start popping magnesium pills. I think that I have said everything that I want to, so I'll just tell people that are tuning in online, there are lots of free articles on my website, Vibrant Health Company, and there are lots of videos on our YouTube channel, Vibrant Health Company, and we're really all about getting you well and keeping you well.